In the quiet desert city of Gilbert, Arizona, a young woman's life was stolen in the dead of night. Her final words, whispered to a 911 operator, were chilling. "I was shot by someone I don't know." And then, silence. The name Rachel Hansen should have been remembered for her bright smile, her love for horses, and her dreams of building a life out on the open range. Instead, it lives on in the shadows, attached to a case that, years later, still has no answers, no justice, and a killer walking free. Rachel Hansen's story begins far from the violence that would one day claim her life. Born in Arizona, she was adopted by a local foster couple who own a ranch in Gilbert. From her earliest years, she seemed most at home outdoors, surrounded by animals, especially horses. Friends and family say she had a way with them, as if they trusted her instantly. Rachel was the kind of person who could walk into a barn full of restless horses, and within minutes, they'd all be calm. It was like she spoke their language. She wasn't just an animal lover. She was driven. At just 16 years old, Rachel graduated from high school. By 19, she had turned her passion into a profession, launching the early stages of her own horse training business. For a time, life seemed to fall into place. Rachel was living on a horse ranch in Queen Creek, Arizona, fully immersed in the work she loved. But in June 2022, everything changed. Circumstances forced Rachel to leave the ranch and move into an apartment she was subleasing at the Redstone Apartments, just a short drive from the Santan Village Mall in Gilbert. At first, it seemed like a temporary setback. But Rachel quickly realized she'd inherited more than just a set of keys. The apartment reeked of marijuana. The previous occupants, she learned, had been selling drugs in the unit and had racked up multiple complaints from neighbors. Rachel wasn't part of that world. But in this new environment, she was suddenly living in its shadow. On the night before her death, something strange happened. Someone entered Rachel's apartment unexpectedly. She was startled, caught off guard. The intruder didn't steal anything, but left behind a bizarre calling card. A jar of pickles, sitting on the counter. We don't know if it was a warning, a prank, or something more sinister. But whatever it was, it set the stage for what happened next. Gilbert Police Report 2022. Rachel's unease was growing. Whether she realized it or not, the walls were closing in. On the night of June 28th, 2022, Rachel's fiancé came over. The two spent the evening together, talking, relaxing. Around midnight, he left, and Rachel went to bed. What happened just 2 hours later would end her life. At approximately 2 a.m., an unknown person entered Rachel's apartment. The shooter fired a single bullet. It entered through her lower left side and exited out her right shoulder. In shock and agony, Rachel managed to grab her phone and dial 911. Her voice was weak, but her words were clear. "I was shot by someone I don't know." Police and paramedics rushed to the scene. She was still conscious when they arrived. They transported her to a hospital in Chandler, where surgeons worked desperately to save her. But Rachel Hansen never woke up. She died on the operating table that night. She was just 19 years old. In the days following the murder, investigators began piecing together a troubling picture. Rachel had been fired from the horse ranch earlier that year, following a dispute. The ranch owners claimed she owed them money for a damaged trailer and refused to return her horse until she paid. After her death, her parents paid the balance and brought the horse home. But there was another, darker thread. Records revealed that the father of Rachel's fiancé had threatened to kill her months earlier. The reason for the threat remains unclear, but police confirmed it was documented. This wasn't a random home invasion. Somebody knew her. Somebody wanted her gone. Former investigator, 2023. In the hours after Rachel Hansen's death, the Gilbert Police Department faced a grim reality. They were started with almost nothing. No eyewitnesses. No clear motive. No murder weapon recovered at the scene. But they did have one critical clue. Rachel's final words on the 911 call. That statement sent detectives down two possible paths. Either Rachel was telling the truth, and the killer was a stranger, or she recognized the attacker, but was protecting them with her last breath. Investigators processed the apartment carefully. There were no signs of forced entry, suggesting that Rachel either opened the door for her killer or they had a key. Strangely, the jar of pickles from a night before was still sitting in her kitchen. Some detectives dismissed it as irrelevant, but others wondered if it was a warning, a marker, or even a calling card from someone trying to send a message. You don't just leave random food in someone's house unless you want them to notice. In my experience, that's not random, it's intentional. The so-called pickle incident became one of several odd details in the case file. But investigators were also aware of a more tangible threat. Months earlier, Rachel had reportedly been threatened by her fiancé's father, a man with a reputation for having a quick temper. According to witnesses, he told her, in no uncertain terms, that he would kill her. The alleged threat was documented, but no action was taken at the time. After Rachel's death, police interviewed the man, but he denied any involvement, claiming he was at home asleep during the shooting. Rachel's fiancé was also questioned. He told detectives that he left her apartment around midnight, just 2 hours before the shooting. His alibi placed him at his own home at the time of the crime. But the timing and his connection to both Rachel and his father meant that police couldn't completely rule him out. It's not that they had direct evidence against him. They didn't. But when you're that close to the victim, you're automatically part of the investigation. Another thread in Rachel's life involved her recent fallout with the ranch owners where she had worked and lived. The dispute over the damaged trailer had soured the relationship, and some people close to Rachel believe the tension ran deeper than money. Investigators interviewed the ranch owners, who denied any involvement. They insisted that while they had disagreements with Rachel, they would never harm her. Then there was the apartment itself, a place with a history. Before Rachel moved in, the unit had been home to alleged drug dealers. Police had responded to multiple complaints in the months prior, and there was speculation that whoever killed Rachel might have been connected to that criminal activity, possibly mistaking her for previous tenant or targeting her for something she knew. In cases like this, you have to ask, was the victim the intended target, or was she in the wrong place at the wrong time? The autopsy revealed details about the fatal wound. The bullet entered from the side, traveling upward through her torso. This trajectory suggested the shooter was standing slightly below her, possibly at the apartment's entrance while she stood further inside. That angle, combined with the lack of forced entry, hinted that Rachel may have been shot within seconds of opening her door. The murder sent shockwaves through Gilbert and the surrounding communities. Vigils were held. Friends posted tributes online, sharing photos of Rachel riding horses, laughing with friends, and doting on her animals. But beneath the grief, there was fear and frustration. How could a young woman be shot in her own home, in a relatively safe neighborhood, and the killer simply vanish? It doesn't make sense. Somebody knows something, and I don't understand how this case isn't solved yet. Weeks turned into months, and the case grew colder with each passing day. Detectives followed every lead they could find. Phone records, surveillance footage from nearby businesses, witness interviews. But each path ended in a dead end. The lack of physical evidence was crippling. Without a murder weapon, without fingerprints, without a viable suspect caught on camera, the investigation began to stall. In the official case log, the final entries from that first year were painfully short. No new leads. Case remains open. For Rachel's family, the lack of progress was devastating. Her mother, in particular, became an unwavering advocate for justice, contacting detectives regularly, pushing for updates, and refusing to let the case fade into the background. She was my baby. I will never stop fighting until I know who did this. Until I know why. Local journalists began to pick up the story, highlighting the bizarre details. The mysterious pickle jar, the possible threats, the shadowy history of the apartment. Community members attended city council meetings, asking why no arrests had been made. The unanswered question lingered in the air. Was the killer still walking free among them? As the months wore on, theories about Rachel's murder multiplied. Some believed it was an act of personal vengeance, tied to her strained relationships or past threats. Others suspected a case of mistaken identity, a deadly mix-up involving the apartment's criminal past. And then there were the whispers about a professional hit, someone hired to silence her for reasons that had yet to surface. The problem is, in cases like this, the truth is often stranger and more complicated than anyone imagines. The Gilbert Police Department maintained that the case was open and active, but released very little information to the public. That silence, though intended to protect the investigation, fueled suspicion and frustration. Some in the community began to wonder if key details were being withheld, or worse, if certain suspects were being protected. For those who knew Rachel, her death left more than grief, it left fear. If someone could kill her in her own home, without witnesses or arrest, what did that mean for the rest of them? We kept our doors locked at all times. And I kept thinking, if they can't solve this, what chance do the rest of us have? Years have passed since Rachel Hansen's murder. Evidence boxes gather dust in police storage. Witness memories fade. But for her loved ones, the pain remains as sharp as the day she died. Every unanswered question, every dead lead, is a wound that refuses to heal. Somewhere out there, the person who shot Rachel Hansen is still free. If you have any information, no matter how small, call the Gilbert Police Department or your local crime tip line. Because justice delayed is justice denied.